questions to each candidate. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond, and each will have a 30-second rebuttal to say things the second time that they didn't say the first time. Okay?
Or the same thing.
Yeah, or the same thing, okay? After I've asked 3 questions, the candidates will ask 1 question of each other. They'll have 1 minute to respond, no rebuttal, okay? After the fourth series, we're going to try to open it up to the audience if we have time. And so you will be asked I'm assuming there are going to be some in-depth cards that are circulating right now. Write your question, make sure you put your name, because what we will do is we will call out your name, and we're trying to find the non-repetitive questions. So we'll call out your name, you will stand up, and we'll toss you a mic, and you can ask your own question. All right? Each candidate will have a 2-minute closing statement. I'm assuming we're going in reverse order. Yes, I think so. Okay. All right. Please hold all applause until the end of the forum. Smiles, grimaces, eye rolling, all permitted. These guys need they need visual cues. Okay. All right. All right. We don't want statues here. This forum will end promptly at 8:35. That means at 8:22, the last question will be asked, and we'll go into the wrapping up of the program here. All right. Now, opening arguments. Ms. Parent, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jim. I'm Elena Parent. Thank you so much to all of you for being here this evening. Thank you to the Young Dems of DeKalb County for organizing our forum, and thank you to Jim Galloway, our incomparable moderator. I'm proud to be the last Democrat in Georgia who unseated a Republican incumbent. In 2010, I was one of 12 Democrats in the country to defeat a sitting Republican legislator. And do you want to know how I did that? I did that because of all of you, the Young Democrats of DeKalb County. It was all of you who showed up at my house to phone bank, who believed in me, who knocked on doors with me. And it was because of that outpouring of support that we were able to achieve that historic victory. I went down to the Capitol, I stood up and fought for our progressive values, and I was effective, perhaps too effective. The Republicans decided that I was doing too well, and that they were going to come after me in redistricting. And they came after not only me, because I'd been an effective advocate, but actually after a lot of other effective women legislators. They drew me in with my good friend Scott Holcomb. They drew us into one district with the notion that they were going to eliminate both of us and achieve their dream of a Republican supermajority in the House where they would have total control over the chamber. I was not going to let that happen. I put the good of the party ahead of my own political platform, and I stepped aside. I supported Scott Holcomb. I left and went to run Georgia Watch. I've been the executive director there for the past 2 years. We are a progressive policy nonprofit where I've worked on issues critical to all of you and all of Georgia, such as expanding Medicaid, expanding opportunities for solar energy, and taking on Georgia Power. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do next. We're going to elect Jason Carter, and we're going to go down to the Capitol, where we are going to fully fund the school year. We are going to fully fund and expand so that we have universal pre-K. We're going to raise the minimum wage, and we're going to expand Medicaid. And I can do all that with your help. I ask for your support and your vote on May 20th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Parent.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening. It's good to see you all. I'm Kyle Williams. I'm one of the candidates for the Democratic nomination for State Senate for this seat. It's good to be in this room again. I've been here many times for many events and many fundraisers and many fried chicken dinners and suppers. Jim, thank you for moderating this. Alana, thank you for agreeing to have this conversation. And to Maggie, she is one of the most organized people I've ever seen. We have a script of time, and thank you all and the Young Democrats of DeKalb County for doing this. Listen, to know why I'm running is to know who I am. What I've done in this district for over a decade, day by day. And let me tell you this, where I've been and what I've done and what I do. I haven't always cleaned up this nice. I'm the son of a factory worker who worked at Goodyear Tire and Rubber in Weakley County, Tennessee for 35 years until they closed the doors. I'm the son of a cafeteria lady who worked her way up to a teacher's assistant in a public school in West Tennessee. And I was the only one in my family to go to college and to dream about or be stupid enough to go to law school and graduate, but I did it. And I moved down here to Georgia right out of law school. And I moved down here because this was the land of opportunity. This was the big city in the South. This was where a kid like me came for a job, for progressive values, for progressive issues, and to live my life. And I have watched this state do everything possible since then to take us down the wrong track. And we are going down the wrong path, period. We have seen that again in a do-nothing session where they did more bad stuff than I know what to do with. That's why I'm running. Because this district has a place at the table to be the progressive advocate and to be a voice, not to be a vote. This district has a position to speak up, to speak out, to say gutting our schools is unacceptable. Disrespecting our teachers is unacceptable. Listening to politicians as opposed to educators and scientists and our own doctors is unacceptable. That's why this district is important, and that's why we're having this conversation, because this is that more progressive voice of this state. I'm Kyle Williams. You're probably going to hear a lot from all of us tonight, and I hope that you will walk across the street with us and drink some beers and continue that conversation. Thank you for being here.
All right, let's get started here. We're going to begin with a discussion that has already been raised in direct mail. And that is the role of style and tactics at the state capitol. Regardless of which one of you is elected, you will be serving in a chamber in which Republicans hold a 2/3 supermajority. How do you leverage that weak position to have some impact, any impact, on legislation that's actually passed? Mr. Williams, I believe you go first on this.
Sure. Listen, that's one of the most questions I get on the campaign trail is how can a Democrat from a Democratic district get anything done at the Capitol? And I think that's a question that a lot of Georgians have. How does anybody get anything done at the Capitol? But let me tell you this, we've got to redefine what that means as to get something done. Getting something done doesn't mean that every bill I pass as your state senator from the most liberal district in the state Senate gets passed. It means we talk about the issues, we vote about the issues, and we yell and scream when we have to, and we fight when we have to, and we cheerlead when we have to, and we round off soft, hard edges when we can. That's why this seat's important. It's not always about winning votes. It's about moving the ball forward. We have seen time and time again where they say the pendulum's swinging. The demographics of the state is going to change. What this district has a role to do is to help push that pendulum. That's how you get something done, Jim.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Williams, I am
Sure.
going to, because we have Ms. Parent trapped here,
You're going to trap me.
I'm going to ask that you keep your seat here, okay?
I will keep my seat.
All right.
I'm sorry to be disrespectful.
Ms. Parent?
I started it. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. That's a very good question. I've experienced firsthand how frustrating it can be to be in a small, and actually artificially small, due to redistricting and other factors, minority at the state capitol. And I know how to get things done in a Republican majority. I've proven that already. You've got to be able, it comes down to your relationships. You've got to be able to build relationships both within your own caucus and relationships across the aisle. And my secret is when you've got a good idea that's common sense, you go talk to your Republican friends, and you get them to sponsor the legislation, and you have them think it's their idea. And that's the best way to get something done. The other thing is that it really takes years to move the ball forward, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 years, talking about an important issue in order to get it passed into law. And so you've got to keep that up. You've got to keep the drumbeat going, and you do have to be a voice. We do have change coming. You have to know when to stand up, when to push, and when to compromise.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, you got an extra 30 seconds.
I will take it. Listen, we've seen time and time again in this district where our own state senator, Jason Carter, yelled about, screamed about, and talked statewide about Hope Scholarships. That's why this seat's important. It's not always about getting things done. It's about talking about the issues, cooperating with the issues, and fighting for what matters, and fighting for the core values of this district. This district understands what those core values are, just like I do because I've lived here a decade. That's where you fight for.
Ms. Parent?
I think that it's critical to remember that we do have huge change coming, and the most important thing one can do from this seat is to be a voice on a statewide level through the media and a champion to build the grassroots so that we can have effective policy both at the state capitol, but also to change the tide for the future. We've got change coming. I can be a part of that change and also help usher it in.
Thank you. Okay, let's get a little local here. Let's talk about citification of DeKalb County. All right, but let's not simply declare whether we are for it or against it. Let's use the perspective of Mary Margaret Oliver, who says that it's inevitable. And let's also take Republicans at their word that when they say that if they see the DeKalb delegation stalling, they're going to push something through no matter what it is. All right? So how do you handle the transition to municipalization so that it is something other than a first come, first served land grab that could leave poorer sections of DeKalb gasping for resources and protects already existing cities? Ms. Parent, your turn.
Thank you, Jim. This is a conversation that I led as a member of the House. When I was in the House, I represented Brookhaven and Chamblee when they went through their incorporations, their recent incorporation and annexation. I drafted legislation with Mary Margaret Oliver so that we could start a discussion about a rational, policy-oriented process towards smarter municipalization of DeKalb County if that's where we were going to go. And in that legislation, I recommended having a role and a seat at the table for all interested parties, the voters, the existing cities, for example. And Representative Oliver and I went to the leadership in the State House to try to get them to entertain that bill. They declined to do so, but Representative Oliver re-sponsored that legislation this past term. And my priority, and that was reflected in that legislation, is that if we're going to municipalize, it needs to be done in such a way where there are sustainable, fair communities created for everyone who has been a resident of unincorporated DeKalb.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Jim. Listen, I'm a land use and zoning attorney. I'm a planner. That's what I do. That's what I've done. And that's how I approach all these cityhood movements, is what is the plan? And that's what I looked for in all of these, whether we were talking about Lakeside, Briarcliff, Briar Vista, Tucker, you name it, is what is the plan for what happens tomorrow? Because tomorrow is inevitable. We will wake up tomorrow, and we will still live within DeKalb County. We will still have our unincorporated neighbors. We will still have our incorporated neighbors. That has to be part of that conversation. What I do know is this. I live in a city. I get that. We have good services and a city that gets it right most of the time, some of the time. It's also 200 years old. We've got to fix that. We've got to have those conversations. We've got to have an inclusive conversation with all of DeKalb County. And we also have to have the harder conversation, which no one had in any of the citywoods, which is, what are we doing about the problem that's caused this? The county. Because even though I live in City of Decatur, I know that we need an effective, efficient DeKalb County. We don't have that right now. And we need that. The whole county needs that, regardless of whether we stay in unincorporated DeKalb or we're in a new city.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. 30 seconds extra.
The county does need to step into a leadership role. Lee May signed an executive order forming a task force that is supposed to study unincorporated DeKalb and provide legislators and policymakers with the facts, the details, and the figures to municipalize the rest of the county in a way that would be fair to all residents of unincorporated DeKalb. And you need the actual dollar amounts on the table to, as a policymaker, be able to tease that out. So we need the county to step into a leadership role, and then the state capitol needs to also treat our county fairly and realize that that's what they would want, sustainable communities for their county long term. It's not about who's in what neighborhood with what office tower and what single Republican legislator to make that decision.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Jim. Listen, I went down to the cityhood hearings. I went down to the ones that were community-led. I went down to the ones that were at the Gold Dome. And what concerned me the most was the emotion, the animosity, the adversity in the conversations between the proposed cities. Because we all know we're in this together. Regardless of whether we're in a new city, an old city, a future city, you don't build moats, you don't build walls, you're within the county, and you have next door neighbors. And that's what has to be a part of that conversation, is what is the long-term vision for this county, and what is the long-term vision for the cities, the unincorporated areas, and the incorporated areas.
Okay, now y'all kind of anticipated me, because of course the next step in this is a reconfiguration of DeKalb County government. It's in the works, we know it's being looked at. As a DeKalb legislator, you're going to be knee-deep in this, so what do you want to see? Do we abandon CEO? Do we go back to do we go to a county manager system? Who's got the first question? Mr. Williams, I think this is yours.
You're the moderator, Jim.
I don't know.
I'm awfully democratic about this.
I don't think you can keep up with what I have. Listen, I think I'm knee-deep in this, whether I'm the legislator for DeKalb County for this District 42, or whether I just stay here and live here the longest I have. If you've been in the county as long as I have, we've had tremendous hopes. We've had tremendous bottoms. We've had a roller coaster of what the county was doing, what the success of the county was, and what our hope and aspirations were for its future. What we do know is this: we're broken. We're broken. And so I know that there is a task force that has been community-led and community-led from the county, and that's the position that I would have, is to let that play through and have those conversations here locally from the ground up, as opposed to from the top down. Because what concerned me about cityhoods also was we had legislators down there who don't know DeKalb County, don't believe in DeKalb County, don't know our history, don't know our future, but that we're making decisions over cities in DeKalb County. That can't be how we decide our own form of government. How we have to define our own form of government is from the bottom up. And I'm a stakeholder in that. We're all a stakeholder in that because we're sitting here.
Ms. Parent?
I agree with Kyle that that isn't how decisions should be made. They should be community-led. Unfortunately, that has certainly not been the way business is done related to DeKalb County at our state capital. And certainly I've been seeing that firsthand. The corollary to that is that, yes, we do need citizens to get very engaged and stand up and show up, because if they don't, then it just gives more fodder to the three folks who have the votes of everyone else that they need to push through whatever they want. That being said, I don't know that we need to eliminate the CEO position, but we do need there to be proper accountability checks from the Board of Commissioners. And that is something that we need to look at. Kathy Gannon, one of my good friends who I've been honored to work with for many years and who does a great job as a commissioner, has a blueprint for DeKalb. I support many of the ideas in it. And no doubt also we need to have a strong ethics board out of DeKalb County, because our citizenry has lost a little bit of faith in the way the county government functions. With a strong ethics board, I think we can take a step towards improving that.
Mr. Williams, 30 seconds.
Sure, thank you. I think we can all sit here and know that the DeKalb County of yesterday is not going to be the DeKalb County of tomorrow. But it still has a place at the table, and it still has a place in society, because it has constitutional obligations that it has to fulfill. We only have to look across the street and look at the courthouse to understand that. What we've got to decide to do is what's best for us, and what's best for the cities, what's best for the citizens, what's best for all of us in this county, as to where do we go from here. Because what we know is what we are is not working. And we can rattle off what we all know. We need ethics accountability in the county. We need purchasing and contract review taken out of the CEO's office. We need all of that. But this is a more complex conversation than what has been happening to date.
Ms. Parent?
One thing I'd like to push for, that I pushed for in the Brookhaven cityhood debate, is making the votes, the actual public votes that surround these decisions, more democratic. It's no secret that the authors of some of the cityhood initiatives have tried to pick their voters by putting it on low turnout primaries and turning out just maybe even one precinct. That's really what happened in Brookhaven. So, you know, there's just no excuse in a presidential election year for trying to purposely suppress the vote so that there's extraordinarily low turnout and the vote can be predetermined.
All right, that's the first round of questions. We now enter the Texas cage match.
Who gets to go first?
Mr. Williams, I believe you go. You ask.
Okay.
I go first.
You go first.
Okay.
Sure. Elena, you've said yourself you're new to this district and you've moved here from Chamblee. You represented House District 81. What would you say would be the differences between those two areas?
Well, I would not say I'm new to this area. As a matter of fact, I have represented constituents in this area. I did not move from Chamblee, actually. And I also have represented the folks in this district for the past 6 years, first working as chief of staff for Senator David Edelman, then, of course, parts of the district in my State House district, District 81, And then, Georgia Watch, statewide, I've worked for people on behalf of this district. And I think there are common concerns in both areas. And I think that my experience, both in this district directly and a member of the State House on behalf of people here and farther to the north in DeKalb, serves me very well as far as knowing and representing the interests of this district.
And your question for Kyle?
Kyle, every piece of communication and mail I have sent out in this race has been positive and focused on my vision for the future of Georgia. And back when you and I started talking about this race, you pledged to me, and I have a text on my phone, that you were going to run a clean campaign. And now you've been in the mail attacking me. So what I want to ask you is, will you pledge from this point forward to stand by your word and run a clean campaign?
Thank you. Listen, we're two job applicants up here. We're applying for a job. You're the one who's deciding that job. And you're deciding that job based on who we are and what we've done. I've talked about voting records because my opponent is running based on her experience at the Gold Dome. And votes matter. This is not personal. This is not an attack. This is vote issues that is on the table, and that was the conversation we have to have.
So your answer is no.
No rebuttal.
Okay.
All right, we move on. We move on here. Okay, here's a softball question for you too. All right, your predecessor in this position declared himself an NRA Democrat and voted for HB 60, the bill to expand the places where a concealed weapon can be carried in Georgia. He said that by working with Republicans, he was able to help remove the most egregious portions of the bill, such as campus carry. Gun enthusiasts are already talking about legislation to revive the campus carry issue and are taking aim at gun-free zones. Assuming you do not endorse either of these provisions, how will you fight these and other gun issues when they arise next year? I think, Ms. Parent? Okay,
Yes.
all right.
I think so.
Yes, I do oppose both of those things. I am disheartened by the legislation that passed. I've always been in favor of common sense gun laws. I don't believe that we need guns everywhere. And I have experience knowing how to fight these terrible proposals. And the only things that we can do are stand up, put our feet down, and then think like they think, and turn out the folks who they listen to, who can have their ear and make the arguments in a conservative way and through conservative coalition building. And I've got a lot of experience doing that at Georgia Watch, and I can't wait to put all that experience to use as the state senator for this district. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Jim.
Williams.
Listen, first of all, let me say this unequivocally. I've known Jason and been friends with Jason and served on the early board of Red Clay Democrats with him. And I endorse him and will support him for governor. He's the best choice and we've got to have him. However, that's a big however, I fundamentally have disagreed with him in the past and fundamentally disagree with him now over his votes on guns. They're taking us in the wrong directions. I grew up on a farm in rural West Tennessee. I know how to shoot a gun. I also know how to respect a gun. One of the interesting things that happened to me when you run for office is you get all these questionnaires, and I got a questionnaire from the gun lobbyist. I thought I knew what I should be scared of. I did not know what I should be scared of. This guns everywhere bill is bad legislation, and if he removed the bad stuff, I can't even imagine, because it not only allowed guns everywhere, we expanded stand your ground, I can be committing a crime and shoot you, and then I can claim civil and criminal defense for that? That's insane. Putting more guns on the street, putting more guns in the hands of people who we don't have background check certification for, know their criminal history, know their mental health status, is unacceptable. In this district, as its senator, I will
Okay.
fight that and yell about that.
Okay, Ms. Parent, you got 30 seconds.
Look, there's no doubt that there is a certain ideology at the state capitol that is inclined to a certain attitude towards guns. What most distresses me about this legislation is that it had its genesis in the Sandy Hook massacre. There's no doubt that everyone in this room thinks that the state went the complete opposite direction than what it should in the face of that tragedy. So look, we need to talk to folks who really do support the way we think about guns and get them involved in that conversation, aggressively involved in that conversation.
30 more seconds for
Thank
Mr.
you.
Williams.
I believe you asked one of the things is how do you get that done? I would look to one of my mentors in the state Senate, Vincent Ford. You all know Vincent. Vincent has talked about common sense, gun registration, certification, background checks, and the fact that certain guns don't need to be produced and certain ammunition shouldn't be made. That's how we get that done. And we start having those conversations. And we defeat it the same way we defeated the religious protection bill, is we pack a committee room like we packed tonight's banquet hall.
I'm going to take a moderator's point of view here. Just kind of inject myself for one. I'm going to ask one question. Each of you will have 30 seconds. Okay.
Maggie's going to get mad. You're going off script now.
All right. The religious protection bill was defeated because, for the first time, companies like Coke,
Absolutely.
Home Depot got
Delta.
involved, and Delta got involved. How would each of you try to replicate that? Mr. Williams first, and then Ms. Perry.
Sure. I was on the board of Georgia Equality when this state debated and had a really hard conversation that in fact impacted my family and my partner of 13 years, the marriage amendment. And in that fight, the only people who came down to the committee rooms were people like us. We did not see the business community come out. We did not see Coca-Cola or Delta come out. That has to be a part of the conversation. And it goes back to why I moved down here. I moved down to Georgia, I moved down to Metro Atlanta because this was the land of opportunity for a kid like me. And what we're doing with policies like the Religious Freedom Bill, what we did with the marriage amendment, was kids that are looking at Georgia won't consider Georgia. And our kids who are graduating from here will move to more progressive states. We've got to change that.
Okay, Ms. Perry, you get
So
45.
you hit the nail on the head, Jim. I mean, the way that you have to get these folks' ears is by forming the coalitions with people that have pull with those, with the right in the state capitol. And I've done that very successfully at Georgia Watch. We've actually made significant inroads, frankly, against Georgia Power, which has a whole lot of political capital. We have a coalition of Sierra Club, the Tea Party, Georgia Watch. It spans the ideological spectrum. And I believe you yourself have written about how successful that coalition has been, starting with some of the issues with Plant Vogel and with the expansion of solar power in Georgia. You've got to get all those groups involved and talk their language.
All right, that was good, thank you. All right, even in Georgia, we've seen a remarkable shift in public opinion when it comes to gay marriage. However, repeal of the 2004 constitutional ban on same-sex marriage is unlikely to be. It's not going to go away anytime soon. Where are the areas that Democrats and Republicans can come together to mitigate some of the ban's effects and protect gay rights? Ms. Parent, we start with you.
Well, first let me say that I think it's a tragedy, Kyle, and for those of you in the room who represent the LGBT community, that we have discriminatory laws on the books that hold your relationships in a different place than they might regard my marriage to my husband. And for all of my friends and family who are gay, it's personal to me too. Not the way it is to you, of course, but it is very personal to me. And I think that what we need to do, and I have great hope, first of all, I have great hope, maybe not as much out of our Republican legislature in the very near future, but I do have great hope in the changing tide, where we're going as a country, certainly in some of the protections coming down from the court system. I have great hope. I think we need to work on, and that's why I should say, sponsored Carla Drenner's bill to end discrimination in the workplace. That's one thing that we must do. That bill is co-sponsored by the vast majority of the House caucus on both sides of the aisle. Another thing we can do is try to make sure we're enforcing federal protections in Georgia, and then maybe also next, recognizing marriages that took place legally in other states, bringing all those protections home to Georgia and making them legal in Georgia.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Jim. Listen, if and when I'm elected, I will be the first openly gay male elected to the General Assembly. I will be the only open LGBT member in the state Senate. You want to know why the Religious Freedom Bill got so much heat on it? Because there were three, Carla Drenner, Simone Bell, Keisha Waites, who fought that in the House. They had no counterpart in the Senate. They had no counterpart in the Senate. That's one of those steps towards that, is me being there. The second part is I know that that marriage amendment is more than just marriage. You look at what that actually made unconstitutional. Larry, my partner who's here, who is suffering through this, and it's good to see you, Larry. I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. Listen, it's more than just about marriage. It's not about a ceremony. It's about the fact that when we drive to the beach, I have to put in my luggage documents that you don't have to put in your luggage. And documents that most likely, if they were challenged in some of these conservative courts, would be declared unconstitutional under that marriage amendment. That's what this is about. So we've got to chip away at that. We've got to be seen. We've got to be heard. And I am more hopeful. I am hopeful.
30 seconds.
I am incredibly hopeful, and you want to know why? It's because young voters overwhelmingly support gay marriage and equal rights for all. And the Republicans know that. And I actually, Jim, might disagree with you a little bit. I used to think that it would be many years before we could get that constitutional amendment undone. I'm starting to think that there may be enough pressure where we can start to work with those moderate members of the Republican caucus who see the incredible gap with young voters and where this is headed and start to peel them off. I'm ready to try. Let's do it.
Mr. Williams, 30 more seconds.
Absolutely. I mean, I made the pledge early on in this. I got asked a question, and they said, would you sponsor the repeal of that? And I said, unequivocally, yes. Of course I would. Am I going to give you false hope that it's going to pass that first session? You know it's not. But we've got to start having the conversation, and we've got to start pushing that. Because with that, look at all the other issues that we could tackle. Employment non-discrimination policies. This religious freedom bill, which is going to come back, folks. We've got to have those conversations, and the way you have those conversations is to get in the room. Get in the room, step up, speak out, which is what this district has an obligation to do.
Okay, all right, we're getting too serious here. All right. Okay, all right, something fun here. Another area in which opinion has shifted radically is, especially this year, is legalized medical marijuana. So what's your position on that? But also, what's your position on just decriminalization of recreational use of marijuana? Mr. Williams, I think it's your turn.
It's my turn first. Look, yes, I got asked this question when I did a podcast for Decatur-ish, Dan, who's sitting right in the front row. He asked that question, do you support medicinal marijuana and do you support the legalization of marijuana? And I said, yes. Look, we should treat it the same as beer, as liquor, and as tobacco. Regulate it, tax it, and use it that way. So absolutely, Jim.
Ms. Parent.
I was really glad to see the legislation that was under discussion at the state capitol regarding children with seizures and their ability, or inability, I should say, to obtain medical marijuana oil, a cannabinoid oil, here in Georgia, and instead are having to fly to Colorado, have their families be separate. And I was really glad that we engaged in that conversation. I certainly unequivocally support that. Let's help these kids. As far as the legalization overall of the recreational use of marijuana, it's certainly something that I would entertain and that I'd probably be inclined to support. But before I cast any vote on it, I would absolutely make sure that I was talking to law enforcement, teachers, and parents, and seeking a whole lot of input and studying that issue very carefully, ensuring that there are no unintended consequences that I would need to know about as a legislator. But I would be inclined to support it.
Okay. Mr. Williams, you need 30 more seconds on this?
Don't give a litigator more time. Listen, we saw another example of politics as usual with this bill that came through on the legalization of medicinal marijuana for such a small subset of our population who desperately needed help. And those parents and those families were in the Go Dome until the very end. And they got shut out. They got shut out because of politics as usual, that bill was held hostage for something else. That's not right. And she's holding stop, so I'll stop.
Ms. Barron? Okay, all right, good. All right, now it's y'all's turn to ask each other questions. I think Ms. Perry, you go first.
Me?
No, you do.
Okay. All right. Kyle, you've been attacking me for some of my votes in the House. The reality is that I voted the same way as the vast majority of the Democratic caucus on those issues, including Simone Bell, Carla Drenner, Stacey Abrams, Mary Margaret Oliver, Howard Mosby, and I could name a lot of other legislators. Given the fact that let me back up. All of those folks that I just mentioned have endorsed me, except for Simone Bell, who's endorsed you. So my question to you is, would you either renounce Simone Bell's endorsement of you, or admit that you've distorted the voting record of all those folks, including myself?
Is that the question?
That's the question.
It's a long one.
Yeah, it's long. I had a little preface.
Look, I'm being attacked and thrown, saying that I'm throwing mud by talking about votes. Votes do matter, and crowds do not make something right that was wrong. I am not distorting the voting record. Check the facts. Check the facts. Look at what was voted on, look at who voted for it, and look at what the issues were. This district knows, and this district's place at the table is to stand up for right and wrong, and stand up for our progressive moral values. And there were some votes that a lot of people took that this district did not agree with. Cutting the advanced voting period, that's something that this district does not agree with. Cutting hope, that's a sacred cow. You don't cut it to save it. Privatizing our water is not something you vote for. These are legitimate issues that this district has to have, and these are legitimate concerns. And as your senator, I will vote the conscience of this district.
All right. Now, Mr. Williams, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Elena, you in your job as executive director of Georgia Watch tout that that's a consumer protection agency, but you voted to allow utility companies to make campaign contributions to the very political candidates that regulate that industry. Why is that good policy for the state, and how does that protect consumers?
That issue was not one that protects consumers, and that was one that where the utility companies were coming down and claiming free speech and saying that, look, they were in the position where they should be able to make campaign contributions to a variety of legislators. And that's the way that it is for all the other, that's the way, the campaigns are run. And that's exactly the way you've been getting contributions, and that's exactly the way I've been getting contributions. And, that's actually something that I sponsored legislation on that I would like to see changed. I sponsored legislation that would permit individuals to give more money in campaign contributions than I would ever permit corporations to do, because we are too captive to special interests. That is the reality of our government today. But I don't believe in it, and I believe it needs to be changed, and that's why I sponsored my good government package.
All right, thank you. We will move on here. Okay, we're shifting to education here. Governor Nathan Deal's decision to remove 6 of 9 DeKalb County school members last year was a significant intrusion of state government into local affairs, and it made quite a few people around here queasy. The governor said he was limited in the tools the legislature has allotted him when it comes to dealing with failing school administrations. He had nothing but a sledgehammer, is what he said. Would you support any changes to state law regarding executive branch intervention in local school board activities? And then part 2, which you can explore if you like in the last part, is the governor has hinted that he needs the power to intervene, not just in cases of administrative failure, but academic failure as well. Do you agree? I think you go first on this one.
I think what's important to focus on is that we never should have gotten to this point. The point that we got to in the destruction of our schools is a direct result of the horrific cuts that have been made to education by the Republicans for over the last decade. And it's led to all sorts of horrible consequences. And so my priorities in education are fully funding the calendar year. We've got to have every kid in school 180 days. Fully funding and expanding pre-K so that every child has the opportunity to live up to his or her full potential. And expanding and protecting the Hope Scholarship. And I think if we did those things, we would not have our school boards and our school systems in the position that has led to a lot of this nonsense.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Jim. You asked me if I would give power to the governor to do what he did. With this governor, with Republican Nathan Deal, I have a hard time agreeing that he should be able to do anything, because I fundamentally disagree with most stuff that he does. But what I know is that what he did in his intervention in DeKalb County schools had some bipartisan support. we had good representatives that stood behind him. And I know that our schools were on the wrong track. Having a school face losing accreditation is, if you're a graduating senior or an uprising junior, I can't imagine the fear of that. What I do know is that schools drive everything. And you look at this district, you look at District 42, and we have every school possible. We have city schools of Atlanta, we have city schools of Decatur, we have DeKalb County schools, we have local created charters, we have public charters, we have private schools, we have home schools. We got all of it. And those are the most important things. Your neighborhood school and how successful they are drives business, drives your property values, drives how your neighborhood looks and feels, and the future of your family, whether you have kids or not.
All right, you got, both of you have followers coming, but let me reiterate the question here.
That's a polite way of saying
Yeah,
we
what
didn't
was the
answer.
second part? Yeah.
The second part is that
Oh, right, okay.
the governor intervened because of administrative failure, but he's talked about the need to intervene because of academic failure. Does he need that? Mr. Williams?
Not this governor. Not this governor. We have seen, what was the debate we just saw at the Capitol over Common Core? That wasn't about teaching standards, that was about politics. It was about politics. So I would say no. And I would say absolutely no. On academic standards, look, we have to listen to educators. We are not listening to educators when we're talking about teacher certifications, classrooms, activities, what the standard of testing is, when we test. My mom she is a teacher's assistant in first grade. I know when they test, I know how they test, I know what they're doing, and she can probably rattle off what's more important in that classroom than her state representative or her state senator. That's who we've got to listen to.
Ms. Perry?
I think you really just have to talk about what's the root of the problem, why do we have academic failure, and then let's talk about how do we fix that. You know, why are we talking about, oh, the governor, someone who hasn't been elected by these folks, should be in the position to undermine democracy and take these actions. I think that's dangerous, you know, and it may be justified in certain instances, but it's very dangerous. So that's not the conversation that I would be having as a leader in the state Senate. The conversation is, if there's academic failure, why, what are the root causes, and then let's talk about what we can do as policymakers to fix those things.
Okay, thank you. All right, more on education. Governor Deal, again, has said recasting the way the state funds school systems will be a top priority for him should he win re-election. Let us, just for the sake of argument, suppose that he does win in November. Do we change QBE or scrap it? And would you be in favor of alternative funding streams, such as a sales tax over a property tax? Ms. Perrin, I think you're first.
There's been a lot of discussion over a long number of years about updating QBE, and there's no doubt that it's inadequate. The way we fund schools is inadequate, and that does need to be updated. I would want to seek the counsel of folks who are a lot more in depth on the particulars of QBE to know whether or not we update that or whether we scrap it. My inclination is certainly that we update it. But as far as alternative funding streams, look, yes, we've got to fully fund the school year. We've got to give more educational opportunity. We've got to fully fund pre-K. So we also need to be taking a look at the inequities in our current educational funding system and the best ways to address that so that we don't have the kids with the least means in the position where their schools provide the least opportunity for them to fulfill their true potential. So yes, we've got to look at all the way that's funded. And I know that in some states, far more of the funding comes from the state, the whole, and I'll finish that in the next 30 seconds.
That's a quick one. I'm going to use that.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Jim. When the Republicans and when Nathan Deal talks about restructuring QBE, the Quality Basic Education Funding Formula, he's not talking about doing things that we would all agree with. He's talking about he's tired of us saying you don't fully fund it and here's the level we're supposed to be funding it at, and instead we're funding it here. What he's going to do is just lower the standard to here and say we fully funded it.
That's right.
That's wrong. We also know that QBE needs some tweaks. Not every school needs the same thing, has the same thing, requires the same thing. That has to be addressed. What we do know is you can't cut billions and billions and billions and billions and shift the burden back to the taxpayers for property taxes and sales tax. No, absolutely not. I would not support that. to fill the state's obligation, its moral obligation and its constitutional obligation to educate every kid where that kid is. That is what we have to do. Did you, Ray, stop?
I didn't,
Oh.
but there it is.
She's looking and nodding at me, but there it is.
I'm a
That's
school
great.
teacher, you're gonna get me nodding a lot.
Ms. Parent, finish your thought here.
Okay. So there are some states that fund more equitably, whereby the more funding comes from the state, which everyone has pulled its resources into, than through the property tax system, which leads to more inequitable funding results. And we've got to have that funding be as equitable as possible. And actually, you know what? There are some school districts and some communities where I am perfectly comfortable that there is more funding going to those kids, because that's what we as a society need to put into them so that they have the outcomes that they can achieve and that benefit all of us collectively.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Jim. You only have to open the paper to know that we have public school districts throughout the state that are on the verge of bankruptcy. Bankruptcy. Those are school districts like where I went to school, Weakley County Public School, where there was one school. It's where my mom still is the education assistant, so my sister and I went. And if that school had closed, I don't know what would have happened to me and my sister. Because my dad worked in the factory, my mom worked in the cafeteria, so she would have lost her job. Where would they have taken us? How we are not funding education and prioritizing education, how we are privatizing education, is creating permanent underclasses in this society, and that is unacceptable.
Thank you. Next question here. The 2012 vote on the charter school constitutional amendment showed surprising strength in DeKalb County. Obviously, you all have a number of prominent charter schools. The state now has the power to establish such schools with or without local approval, but in the first year, it's been very stingy about exercising that power. This is an open-ended question, but where is the charter school movement headed, and what is the state's proper role? I think it's your turn.
Is it me?
Yep.
It's me. Listen, I'm not going to concede that just because the charter school amendment that was on the ballot passed means that the charter school movement and the privatization of our schools is popular here. We all know that how things get worded on the ballot is woefully misleading. What we saw was people voted against their failing schools. And that is a problem, and that needed to be addressed. I was against that. I was against that charter amendment. And I campaigned against it here in Decatur and in the surrounding areas. And here's why. It created another level of bureaucracy. It took more monies out of public schools. And it created a duplicated system. There was already local control that could create charters and also an appeal system to the statewide level. The future of charters, though, is they're here. They're here. And we've got to fix that, we've got to address that, and what we've got to make sure that we do is that they are not taking resources and funds out of our public classrooms, and that every kid has the same ability and the same option, because what we see is what we know, which is the most expensive kid to educate, the one that has a learning disability, the one that has a handicap, the one that is a behavioral problem, gets excluded from schools.
Thank you. Ms. Parent.
My philosophy is that the first thing you need to do is support your core, which is now, and I believe always will be, our public school system. You know, we've got 87% of Georgia's kids that are going to be educated in the public schools. So that's why I've been saying, you know, priority number one is end the furlough days, make sure we've got every kid in school 180 days, and then let's, you know, talk about universal pre-K after that. I do think charters have a role, and here's the important role I think they play. I think they're excellent laboratories, particularly when they're teacher supported, for trying things that you can't yet scale up in the rest of the system. And I think it's critical because we know that none of us are satisfied with where all of our public schools are. So we have to be innovating and trying new things. Having those as a laboratory where we can find new things that work, and we've already been able to do that in some schools, and then scaling it back up to benefit the whole and improve the core, that's my position, that's where I stand.
Mr. Williams, 30 seconds.
Thank you. You know, the charter, I get asked that a lot. Where do you stand on charters? And it's such a more nuanced question than that, because what is also happening in this state is by by design by the state, by state law, every school district, every public school district is going to have to decide what they're going to do. Are they going to stay the same? Are they going to become a charter system, which is still a public school, or are they going to go into the other one that is the QBE? QE squared, I'm sorry. I get my initials confused. And those are still public schools and still about local control and pushing the thing down. So where's the future of charter schools? And I think what we're seeing, especially from Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, is a fundamental belief in a charter system, but still a public school. Now what's important for that is that City Schools of Decatur...
You'll get your extra time.
I'm sorry. City Schools of Decatur already is a system-wide charter. We've got 2 other districts throughout this DeKalb County, DeKalb and Atlanta, that are most likely going to make those same changes.
Special award of 1 minute to Ms. Perry.
Oh, thank
I
you.
don't know if I took a whole minute.
I don't know if you did either.
I'm not going to argue with timekeeping. I'm not going to argue with timekeeping.
And I may not, need a whole minute here. I think that, what I have seen happen a lot at the state capitol is there's a whole lot of platitudes out of the Republican leadership when they talk about complex problems. For example, the DeKalb school system. I always hear, well, we'll just shrink it from 9 to 7, that'll solve all the problems. Oh, the schools are failing, let's make it a whole charter system. Let's do that, that will fix everything. And they don't ever really want to talk about the real problems and what it would really take to solve them, because they don't have the ideas, or even if they know, they're not willing to do it because they refuse to commit the resources. And so that is what they're always blabbing about. So I don't know, I'm skeptical of the, every school system has to be a charter system, or every needs to be the QE squared. It's all their platitudes. I'm very skeptical.
Kyle, you have a
Yes, sir.
question for Ms. Parent. It's that time again.
Wow, we're almost done.
Elena, you voted to limit early voting from 45 days to 21 days, cutting voting days in half. Do you regret that vote?
Well, no, that's not at all what that legislation was about. What we had was the Republicans trying to eliminate early voting. And the only way as Democrats, and I know this because I've served down there, that you can get anything done is by sticking together and utilizing all the leverage you have in your caucus, and Ron Mayo's here and he will back me up on this, to get, and Michelle Henson, and to get something done. So we, in the face of them trying to eliminate early voting, we had people in our caucus negotiate through that bill, and so we had Howard Mosby, the chair of the DeKalb delegation. We had Keith Hurd, another member of the caucus, sponsoring that legislation. So in the face of no early voting, and by the way, unlike what your mailer said, there is early voting this Saturday, eliminating early voting, or sticking by those that negotiated blood, sweat, and tears to keep it, yeah, I'll stick by those who negotiated blood, sweat, and tears to keep it.
Ms. Parent, your question for Mr. Williams.
So we are, as I was just saying, in a very significant minority right now. That comes with all kinds of tough choices that I've lived through because I've been a legislator, and they're not all easy. My question to you is, what issue would you be willing to compromise on to pass legislation or to improve legislation? Because what I'm getting from you is that's not something you're willing to engage in.
To the question. Look, she's right. There are fundamental things that I believe that we don't compromise. And we've seen our senator not compromise on them and to fight on those issues. That's what this district is about. Now, I also understand as a small business owner and as a litigator that you choose the hills you die on. And you know where to make compromises and you know where to fight. Where I know to fight and where I disagree with my opponent is the battles that she walked away from. Early voting is sacrosanct. I would not take that vote. Hope is sacrosanct. I would not take that vote. These are core issues of the Democratic Party. And let's think about this. This district is not a swing district. This is a 73% Democratic district. This district's place at the table is to be that progressive advocate, is to be that progressive voice, is to be that leader on the moral causes that we believe in as Democrats.
All right. Okay.
You're losing control of it.
I'm really worried here.
How many more we got to, we're standing
I know,
down
right?
here.
I'm on the cheat sheet over here.
All right, yeah. Well, I don't think we're gonna get to all of these. In fact, I tell you what, I think we're gonna open it up to a couple, at least three. Now, what are our rules here? Maggie, what are our rules on audience questions?
If you pick a question.
Do they both get them in? Do they both?
There's time for that, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Same question.
If they have
You
it-
pick them.
I'm gonna pick them. Mr. Abramowitz, I need you to recast your questions so that both candidates can answer and give some context.
So this question actually is inspired by another comment that was in one of Kyle's mailers, or a comment that you made in any event, that you referred to Governor Roy, former Governor Barnes' record on education as damaging to education in Georgia. I wonder if both of you could comment on, looking back at Governor Barnes' record in comparison with the record of the Republican governors who followed him, how would you evaluate that record, and would you still stick by that comment?
I think
Mr. Williams.
that was
Asking it to me.
Yeah. You go first.
I believe what you're referring to is an email that came out from my campaign from a teacher, from Jenna Black, who I'm happy to have her support, and she's been here in City Schools at Decatur forever. And she is in charge of the Fraser Center, which is a pre-K birth to 3 program over at the high school. And it started because the high school was losing kids to dropping out when they had children and got pregnant. And so they started the Fraser Center. Now it serves as a pre-K program here. Look, ask me to evaluate a Democrat next to a Republican, I'm going to pick the Democrat every time. However, it is unchallenged that Mr. Barnes, Governor Barnes, had an issue with teachers and had an issue that they complained about. And so, yes, we stand by that.
Ms. Parent?
Well, I couldn't disagree more. I put Governor Barnes' record up in front of everyone in this whole room in his support of public education compared to where we've been since he left office. And I think we all know that we would be in much better shape if he had been able to defeat Nathan Deal in 2010.
Sonny.
No, 2010, Nathan
2010.
Deal.
You're right. Okay, all right.
I'm like, wait a second. That's the facts, and I think we all believe that in this room. And I got a problem with Democrats trying to rip down other Democrats when we have no power in our state government, and every single office in Georgia is held by a white Republican man. That's not what I stand for. That's not the principles I bring to the table.
All right. Where is Jay Landay? Have a mic.
Have your question.
Well, I'm sure he knows.
Don't get him to switch.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the candidates. This has been really exciting. And hopefully this question will continue things in that vein.
We'll try.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to March of 1953. That's the infamous day that the legislature decided that this was going to be an open shop state. And hopefully we're going to have a very progressive member of the state senate from this district, no matter who wins. And so my question is, will you vote to repeal the open shop law and restore labor rights in Georgia?
Ms. Parent, I think you go first on this one.
Well, I'm proud that I've been endorsed by the labor movement and a variety of individual labor organizations in both of my campaigns. And I've stood up to horrific anti-labor bills that have come down from the Republicans. When I was in the House, they tried to pass this no picketing thing. That was a really good example. They combined with the Tea Party to kill that. So that's exactly what I'm talking about, how you got to be able to get the ears of the folks that the Republicans are going to listen to. That's how that died. Most recently, they, this year, we're doing some terrible legislation. They've pushed a lot of bus drivers, for example, into being seasonal employment for private companies, and they don't want to pay them unemployment benefits. So it's like, screw them at every turn, excuse my language, you know? So I'm proud to have been a supporter. Look, we've got too much inequality. The labor movement is important in talking about that. And so to answer your question, yes, and I'm proud that I've got an effective record standing up for that.
Mr. Williams?
Of course. When I said I didn't clean up as nice as this a long time ago, my dad dropped out of college because he married his high school sweetheart and they started having a family. He needed to earn a job. So he started working in a meat packing factory, Reelfoot meat packing, and then he got a job at Goodyear Tire and Rubber where he worked until they closed the door of that factory for 35 years. When I was in college, because I went to college on scholarships and part-time jobs, I worked in that same factory in the summer program, third shift. I knew what it means to work for an honest day's pay. So I am proud of my labor movement. I am proud of my support of that, and absolutely I would support that.
Mr. Jim Walls? Recast your question for both candidates, please.
I'm not sure how to do that.
Do you want your
Wing
question
it.
back?
The question that Mr. Galloway was supposed to ask was, Elena, you've been described in a number of circles as a rising star in the Democratic Party of Georgia. A rising star normally is someone who has set their sights beyond the present. Do you see yourself running for a higher office after a term or two in the Senate? And does that, how might that affect your positions today or next year as a state senator?
We will extend the same question to Mr. Williams. Okay.
This is funny, because if I answered yes, my husband, who's sitting over here, would promptly stand up, walk out, and probably file divorce papers, because he's been through 2 kids and 2 campaigns in our 6 years of marriage, and that's a little bit too much for any man to handle, or woman. So the answer is no. I would not be moving on anytime in the near future, as that question implied. The reason I got targeted in redistricting, though, is because the Republicans do see me as someone who can be an effective advocate with a Democratic message that can resonate statewide and talk to constituencies across the state and bring them on board with my positions. Someday, I look forward to being in that role. I can be in that role now in the state Senate, but as far as being a candidate in that role, I got 2 little babies and I got a husband. I'm missing them right now, and they're going to be my immediate concern along with serving in the state Senate. Thank you.
Mr. Williams, what's your 10-year plan?
Well, first of all, thank you for calling me a rising star. I don't know if anyone's done that before. Listen, I ran for an open seat in Decatur City Commission some time ago. Had a great time. Larry and I knocked on every door twice in South Decatur, and I lost. Lost by about 100 votes. And once I got through the pain of losing, I realized that the person best suited for that job won. And Commissioner Patty Garrett, who was supporting me in this campaign, is doing a fantastic job. And I never thought I would run again. I went through it. I did it. Everybody should do it once. And life was good. And then the unthinkable happened. I didn't think Senator Carter was going to run for governor. He did. And I started looking around and I said, who can I support for this? Because this district is my district, this is where my home is, this is where my future is, and this is where my life is. And then I started looking at what this district was. This district fundamentally believes in, fights for, stands up for, and advocates for the same things that I do. And a dream job like that in politics, where you don't have to take a poll and see what you're supposed to believe in, is an amazing thing.
All right, we're going to let you continue that thought because we are now in closing statements. And you're up first.
I'm up first. Can we stand up? Can I stand up
You
now?
can stand up.
Stand up.
Listen, I just want to thank y'all. I mean, this has been a fantastic opportunity. It has been so cool going through this district. I started campaigning full-time for this job in December. Because I said, if we're going to do it, let's do it. Let's do it full-time and let's not waste anybody's time, money, or vote. I'm excited about this race. I'm excited about the future of this district. I'm excited about its role and what it can bring to the table down at the Gold Dome. And let me tell you this, I'm the best candidate for the job. I will answer every question you have, but I will do it over beers next door. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your time. This district deserves someone with a proven track record on the more progressive issues that we believe in. And I've got that. I've got a decade of that here in this district, fighting for the things that I'm campaigning on. And I ask for your vote on May 20th. Thank you, Jim.
Ms. Perrin, I will move out of your way.
Well, thanks so much, all of you. This has been a lot of fun. This has been my first debate that was quite so structured, so I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous, and I'm really excited to be giving the closing statement, but I really appreciate all of you coming out. I appreciate Kyle and you know, being a very, very worthy opponent and the robust discussions that we can have, and they are important for the future of Democrats in Georgia. I think it's an exciting time to be a Democrat in Georgia. At times at the state capitol, when I felt like I was talking into the air and banging my head against the wall a little bit, I didn't quite feel that way. But what's so exciting to me about this now is the tide is turning, and they know it, and we know it. And we're never again gonna have as little power as we do right now. Never again, because we're all gonna make sure that doesn't happen. We got two fantastic statewide candidates on the ticket that are garnering national attention. You know, Jason's an amazing advocate. Michelle Nunn's an amazing candidate, and you know, I think she'll probably be our nominee. So, you know, this is fantastic. I'm so excited. And as I started out saying, you guys are the ones with that energy who made that happen, who believed in me and got me on to a historic victory so that I could be a voice in the state Senate where one had not been. And that's what we're gonna do for the candidates on the top of the ticket. And then we're gonna do that in the State House, and we'll do that in the State Senate. We have so much to be optimistic about if we all band together, and I look forward to working with all of you. Can't wait to be back in the State Senate, if I'm honored enough to be returned down there, and I ask for your vote on May 20th. Thank you so much.
You have the floor now.
Hello, I'm Brisbane Bolger. I'm the president of the DeKalb County Young Democrats. I want to thank you all for taking part of the civic engagement process and let you know that we're doing this for you because this is your district and this really matters. And I want to extend a welcome and thanks to Jim Galloway for being here. And we at the DeKalb County Young Democrats, we don't have a lot of money, but we've found enough money to donate to both campaigns. And we would encourage you all to pick a candidate you like and to donate to either campaign. If you got it like that, donate to both. But,
And vote.
yeah, don't forget to vote May 20th, of course.
Or now, or Saturday.
Oh, yeah. And I would like to send special thanks to Maggie, our treasurer, for organizing this. This is her district, by the way. She put this together because she was so concerned about the future of her district. And I want to let y'all say it again that our meetings are the second Tuesday of every month, and they're at the Avondale Pizza Cafe right up the street on Commerce Ave. Please come join us every second Tuesday. Oh, of course. Thanks to Agnes Scott for hosting us and the you might have heard earlier that Red Clay Democrats are having a happy hour across the street at Twain's. We love you all to come join us. I believe y'all coming?
Yes.
A time to liquor your candidate up and ask a question. All right, thanks again, everybody, for coming out.
Yes.
I know. We've been doing that for 34 years.
Thanks for sending me the email. If you hadn't, I wouldn't be here.
I didn't see you come in. Listen, please, now, drink.
Maybe, okay.
Across the street. Okay, I'll meet you over there.
Towards the show. One sound, white sound, one's
Does he have a child?
He must be on. I live in Avondale and they have
I'm remembering that.
a neighbor thing. I because they're so
Annoying.
annoying, but he gets all of it. So Elena was somewhere last Thursday. So I can go front of it. No, anyway, I made the thing funny. What I do, and so all that takes time and get it right and all. So
Get it right on. I mean, just this morning, he did it right for the small email to go out. And then have to say thanks for, I really think that well, I mean, you just sit there and you think, oh, well, I really about Jim Galloway. Like,
I'll tell you what to say about Jim Galloway.
I could have told you the day after the 2008 election that this was going to be a bad year for Democrats in the Senate. I mean, all you needed to know was Arkansas, Louisiana, West Virginia, South Dakota,